People always ask why I never kept children of my own. I usually tell them life simply worked out that way. Wrong timing, too much work, no suitable house. Small lies, comfortable lies. The truth begins with my younger sister, Emily. She was 6 years old when our parents bought her the dolls. There were 7 of them, each handmade, each with stitched smiles and painted glass eyes that caught sunlight differently depending on where you stood. Mother found them in a little antique shop several towns away. The woman behind the counter wrapped each doll carefully, almost tenderly, before saying something I didn't understand at the time. "They've always belonged with children," Mother smiled. Emily smiled wider. I remember thinking they looked lonely inside their box. I wish I had kept thinking only that. Emily loved routines. She named every doll, brushed their hair before breakfast, read stories aloud every evening, lined them carefully beside her pillow before falling asleep. Children create rules for imaginary worlds. That's how they learn about the real one. At first, everything felt wonderfully ordinary. Then that small habits changed. She stopped inventing stories. Instead, she repeated the same words every night, quietly, patiently, always after making sure the bedroom door had been closed. I once pressed my ear against the hallway wall. Her tiny voice whispered something too soft to understand. Then, 7 tiny voices answered. At least, that's how I remember it. Memory changes over the years, I know that. Perhaps it was only the old wooden house settling. Perhaps I wanted the story to become stranger than it really was. That's what I tell myself. Mother noticed Emily speaking to the dolls. She laughed. "Healthy imagination," Father agreed. "They keep her company." Adults are very good at explaining away unusual things when they happen to children. Perhaps we have to. Otherwise, too many memories become difficult to live beside. Emily stopped asking us to tuck her into bed. The dolls already did. She stopped crying after nightmares. They said dreams aren't real. She stopped needing the hallway light. They like the dark. Each answer sounded sweet, reasonable. Children say peculiar things every day. Only afterward do certain sentences refuse to leave you. One rainy afternoon, I entered her room without knocking. Emily wasn't there. The dolls sat in a perfect circle on the rug, facing inward. Their tiny cloth hands almost touched. Almost. I laughed, moved one accidentally with my foot. When Emily returned, she burst into tears. Not ordinary tears, panicked ones. "You broke the prayer." She hurried to place the doll exactly where it had been. Then, she apologized, not to me, to the dolls. Children apologize to toys all the time, don't they? The prayers became longer. Emily no longer whispered. She recited them clearly, slowly, words I'd never heard before. Mother assumed she'd learned them at church. The pastor insisted she hadn't. Father joked she'd invented her own religion. Emily corrected him. "No, they taught me." She pointed toward the dolls. Everyone laughed. Emily didn't. Looking back, I think that was the first time I noticed her smile changing. Children smile with their whole faces. Emily slowly stopped doing that. Only her mouth smiled. Her eyes remained strangely patient, as though she understood something the rest of us would eventually learn. When relatives visited, she introduced every doll politely, always leaving one introduction until last. "This one remembers." No one ever asked. Remembers what? Children often leave stories unfinished. Adults rarely ask enough questions. Winter arrived. Snow covered everything. Emily rarely played outside anymore. Instead, she carefully taught the dolls how to kneel, hour after hour. adjusting tiny cloth knees, straightening stitched dresses, correcting their positions whenever they tipped sideways. Mother called it adorable. Father bought another dollhouse. Emily refused it. They don't live there. They stay with me. One evening, I woke to soft footsteps upstairs. Emily's room. I climbed halfway up the staircase. Her bedroom door stood open. Moonlight filled the room. Emily knelt facing the window. The dolls knelt behind her. 7 shadows. Perfectly still. The wind moved the curtains. Nothing else moved. I quietly returned downstairs. Sometimes, I wonder whether I actually saw them kneeling, or whether memory rearranged ordinary toys into something impossible. Trauma edits photographs inside your head. Winter arrived. Snow covered everything. Emily rarely played outside anymore. Instead, she carefully taught the dolls how to kneel, hour after hour, adjusting tiny cloth knees, straightening stitched dresses, correcting their positions whenever they tipped sideways. Mother called it adorable. Father bought another dollhouse. Emily refused it. They don't live there. They stay with me. One evening, I woke to soft footsteps upstairs. Emily's room. I climbed halfway up the staircase. Her bedroom door stood open. Moonlight filled the room. Emily knelt facing the window. The dolls knelt behind her. 7 shadows. Perfectly still. The wind moved the curtains. Nothing else moved. I quietly returned downstairs. Sometimes, I wonder whether I actually saw them kneeling, or whether memory rearranged ordinary toys into something impossible. Trauma edits photographs inside your head. Years passed. Emily grew taller, quieter. By 12, she packed away every childhood toy, except the dolls. She never called them toys anymore. Their family, Mother worried, suggested donating them. Emily became strangely calm. They wouldn't like that. The conversation ended. Nobody mentioned the dolls again. Families quietly learn which subjects remain locked. When Emily left for university, she took only one suitcase and one carefully wrapped wooden box. I helped carry it to her car. It felt surprisingly heavy, heavier than 7 cloth dolls should have been. I joked about it. She smiled. They've learned a lot. I laughed politely. I wish she had laughed too. Mother passed away years later. Emily returned for the funeral. The dolls came with her. Older, faded, exactly where I remembered them. That evening, while searching the attic for old photographs, I found Father's journal. Most entries discussed ordinary things: bills, repairs, garden work. Then, one page, written shakily. Emily isn't teaching herself anymore. I heard another voice. Don't interrupt the prayers. No other explanation, no date, no follow-up. I never asked him about it. He died believing old journals should remain unread. Perhaps he was right. Emily never married, never had children. She still keeps the dolls. They're displayed carefully in a spare bedroom. Once each month, she visits the local orphanage. She volunteers, reading stories, playing games, listening. Everyone says she's wonderful with children. Children adore her. They always become quieter after meeting her, calmer, more patient, more polite. Parents praise her influence. So do the staff. Maybe they're right. Maybe she's simply kind. Maybe I imagine patterns because I spent too much time looking backward. That's entirely possible. Memory enjoys inventing monsters from harmless furniture. Sometimes. Last Christmas, I visited Emily. Her house smelled of cinnamon and old wood. Nothing unusual. Before leaving, I passed the spare bedroom. The door stood slightly open. The dolls sat exactly as always. 7 tiny smiles, 7 glass eyes, perfectly still, except there was another little chair, an 8th one, empty. I asked Emily why she'd bought another chair. She looked genuinely confused. I didn't. Then she smiled, softly. The same smile she learned as a child. Only her mouth, never her eyes. They're saving a place. For who? I asked. Emily looked past me, toward the hallway. You'll understand. When your child comes to visit. I almost remind her I never had children. The words reached my lips, then stopped. Because I suddenly remembered something. A little girl, 6 years old, standing proudly beside 7 handmade dolls, smiling with her whole face, before anyone taught her how to pray. Sometimes I wonder if the dolls changed Emily, or if they simply waited patiently for someone small enough to believe that innocence could be taught into something else. And whenever I think back to that first afternoon in the antique shop, I no longer remember the old woman saying, "They've always belonged with children. Now." I remember her saying something slightly different, something quieter, something I could have sworn she whispered only after Mother turned away. They always come back for another one. At the time, I thought she was talking about collectors. Now, I'm not so sure, because every family photo from that year shows 7 dolls, except the last one. The one taken just before Emily's 7th birthday. There are 8. And no one in my family, not even Emily, has ever been able to explain where the last one came from.